Hey guys, I said I was going to do a quick video. Well, it's not going to be quick because I'm going to talk a lot about the House of English Laundry. You know, not even an overview, just kind of where they went wrong. Now, let's start out with English Laundry. I fell in love with English Laundry, like a lot of you guys. The presentation and the fragrances for the price. And I'm not talking the recent price of 15, 20, $25. I'm talking they were 50, $60, right? Really good price for that presentation, the fragrances, Windsor, and the originals. This is what I consider the originals. You may not, but Windsor, Cambridge Night, uh, Oxford Blue, Signature Arrogance, um, Notting Hill, the kind of the six originals that really made me fall in love with the house. Then they released London, which isn't a bad smelling fragrance, but it's basically a clone of Aventus, which is fine. But it wasn't the best clone of Aventus. Its performance wasn't great. It smelled a little more synthetic, somewhat cheap. It was a little greener than Aventus, which is again fine. But all that is fine. But that's kind of where I feel they started to start chasing trends. Really, they brought that out, and then they brought out, this is Charmer, Armor, uh, Noir, geez, a couple others. And I feel, like I said, they're chasing the trend, trying to get the modern youth, youthful kind of fragrance, sweet, fresh, aromatic. And not every one of them smell like Invictus, but they're in that family of fragrances, right? The sweet, fresh, aromatic. And none of them are really bad, actually. Most of them are good. It's just they're not as good as other ones in that genre. And then on top of all that, it seemed like once they released London, now I have an original London and another bottle that was, the reformulation, I guess you'd call it. And the original London's okay, performance wise, 5, 6 hours, but the other one is a couple hours. And I noticed that, you know, uh, I haven't smelled them all, but the few that I have smelled, the new reformulation ones, I don't know if that's the actual case, but they don't smell as strong. They don't last as long. Like I smelled just the other day, uh, Oxford Blue. They had a tester out at Shoppers. I forget what the hell. I'll give it a spray on the back of my hand. And compared to the Oxford Blues I have, it is weak. Weak. It doesn't project very long. It didn't last that long. Um, so I'm going to have to agree with most people saying that the newer stuff that they've released just isn't as good. And that really hurts my heart because I really loved English Laundry. You were getting decent fragrances at the time, really good presentations for a really good price. And that was kind of their niche for a while. And a lot of people caught on to them. And then, like I said, for whatever reason, they decided, no, we're going to make weaker fragrances, save some money, use cheaper oils, less of them, and then release fragrances that are just all samey, I guess, for the lack of a better word. And I've got no script, so if I say things over, repeat myself, I'm sorry. Sometimes I do that, so please deal with me. I'm just rambling. Anyway, that seems to be round London is when they started to really, I noticed, the quality just went down. Even for $60, $70, they weren't. Now for the 15 or 20 you can pick them up at, they're still okay. Um, but that's just it. They're just okay. You can get better options at that price now. Whereas before, when you could pick up English Laundry for about $40, the original couple years of them fragrances, you were getting a good quality fragrance for the price. Remember that. And now it's just they've got to stop chasing them trends, man. It's not working. Um, and I know they're not a super profitable house. I mean, I'm sure they have money, obviously, but they're not a Dior, they're not a Chanel, they're not a Gucci, they're not. I know they can't afford take a big risk, but they've got to do something. So can they save it? Some people would say no. I think they can. And just my 2 cents worth, how they're going to do that is, first off, obviously, use better ingredients, high quality ingredients, or higher quality ingredients. And we understand that you're not going to be able to put out a fragrance at 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, $90 with top tier ingredients, but you can get just under that and get way better performance than they're getting on the newer stuff they're releasing. But they also have to bring something out. I don't want to say daring or different, but something a little bit, while still daring and different, is still safe. Think Dior Sauvage Elixir. When that first came out, that was different than everything that was out. I mean, yes, it's got some similarities and other things. I get that. But for the most part, that was a big chance that Dior took on it. And I like that because that was like the old Dior when I was younger. They released stuff. Everybody says it. I'm not the only one. Right up until basically Sauvage, they released even the Dior Homme line. That was a big risk. Nobody ever used iris like that in a man scent. It was so that was not really out of their wheelhouse if you think about it. To release something a little different, a little could be hit or miss, but still keeping it on a somewhat mass appealing, safe line, just there, right on the line. It wasn't below it or above it. It was just kind of right there. And that's kind of what I think English Laundry has to do. And they got to release something, not a funky oud, rose, saffron fragrance, not some dark, dank, vetiver, stank fragrance. Something like a Dior Sauvage or a Dior Sauvage Elixir or a Hugo Boss Elixir or, something even like a spice bomb type thing, something where there's some other than just fresh, sweet, and aromatic. They've got to release something that, while smelling a little different than everything else, is still appealing. Like Elixir, Sauvage Elixir. They've got to release something like that. And if they don't do that, then they're not going. First off, it's not going to happen. They're not coming back if they don't do that. Second thing they have to do is they have to consider the price. See, they've already tainted their name. So even if they released a really good fragrance with super high quality ingredients, which I really think they have to do, they're not going to be able to charge $150, $170, $180, $200, $220, $230 for it. You're not going to be able to do it. They're going to have to keep it around $100. They're still going to make a profit, but it's not going to be much, because on top of that, they're going to have to aggressively advertise. And I mean, not just, TV commercials. They don't have to do that at all anymore. TV, especially for fragrance world is kind of dead. They've got to market on all the socials heavily. YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat. I'm sure I'm missing a couple. I'm sorry. Twitter. Well, Twitter's kind of just a political platform now. So, they've got to aggressively advertise on that. But also on top of that, they've got to go to the big stores. You've got to go to, in the States, your Dillard's, your JCPenney's, your Sephora, and pay for good retail space. Put it out, front and center as soon as you walk in them stores. You have a big display of them. Pay the retail, because you got to pay for that retail space. That's what I don't think a lot of people realize, is when you walk into a store and you see all these things, everything has been paid for by that company. We want this much retail space for this long. Let's make a deal, So they've got to pay for that retail space. And in Canada, it's going to be basically Sephora, The Bay, and Shoppers Drug Mart. Other countries, I'm not sure. I'm sorry. But you've got to pay. And like I said, for a solid couple months for that fragrance. And Then after that, you do it again with another fragrance, and then another, and then two or three fragrances, four fragrances in. I think it'll start to pay for itself. I really do. I think they can make a comeback. It's not going to be 6 months. It's going to take a couple of years if they do something like that. And that would, I think, like I said, you release something really good. You keep the price fair, you around $100, because you've already, like I said, you've tarnished your name now. So you can't expect somebody to walk into a store and spend $175, no matter how good the fragrance is, on an English Laundry. Just not going to happen. You've got to advertise the hell out of it on the socials, and you've got to pay for that retail brick and mortar space. And that's pretty much the only way they can do it. They also have to do their best to keep it out of places like the rack stores. Although I love them, you love them, rack stores and discounters. They've got to do their best. And really the only way to do that is to not oversaturate the market with it. Instead of releasing 500,000 bottles to stores, release 100,000 bottles. Let make it, I don't want to say create false scarcity, but make it so you pretty much have to get it in the retail environment. Or if you do get it on a discounter, it's not that discounted that heavy. Not because I want to spend more money. No, God, no. After a year or so, fine. Let it go to the rack stores and stuff. But for the first year or so, keep it pretty tight. Keep your game close to your chest, right? And I think that'll help. I think that would bring them back, because they've still got, to people like me and some of you guys, we remember the older days. It's hard to say that because it was fucking, 6-7 years ago, but 8 years ago. But the older days when you picked up that English Laundry fragrance for the first time, you're like, wow, this is really good. And for the $60-$70, that's ridiculous. And I think they could get to that again. They just have to. I'd even change the bottles. I know it sounds funny because I love the presentation, but subliminally you'd show people would think, okay, this is not English Laundry of old. And don't just change the bottles and put the old stuff in. Let that line die. All those ones, just let them go. They're not working anymore. Let them go. Start fresh. But I wouldn't drastically, what I would do is just basically make them from almost a square bottle to a taller rectangle bottle. Keep the same kind of cap and the rectangle bottle, and that would signify to somebody, like I said, most customers who know English Laundry, that okay, this isn't. I'm not getting the cheap stuff I was getting, and cheap I don't mean in a good way. I mean like the cheap stuff that I was getting a couple years ago. I'm getting new stuff. This is a whole new. It was subconsciously that does do that to people, where they, and that's why companies who have a successful brand generally don't change the bottle. Think of Sauvage EDT, Sauvage Eau de Parfum, Sauvage Poum, even Sauvage Elixir. Pretty much have kept the same bottle. Little tweaks in this, but because the line's successful, there's no need to change it. Fahrenheit Aqua, Fahrenheit Parfum. I mean, they've kept the same little tweaks, but it's been the same bottle. Chanel, Allure Homme Sport, Allure Homme Extreme, kept the same bottle. Bleu de Chanel Eau de Parfum, kept the same bottle. The Boss bottle line, every one of them. So you only have to change the bottle when it's time to say to people, we're starting over, and they that's something else they should do. But that's just a talk on English Laundry, the house. What have they done to themselves, really? Can they come back? And I think they can, but it's going to take a little work. It's going to cost a little money. And I don't know their finances. I don't know if they have that kind of money. If they don't have that kind of money, then all this is for naught, because it's just not going to happen. But if they have that kind of money and can take a little bit of a risk, pay the advertisers, pay the retail stores, the brick and mortar stores, and put something out there at a decent price, $100, $120 type deal, for a good fragrance, something that YouTubers bigger than me are going to be like, this is really great. It's $100. Oh my God, what a steal. And then, like sheep that we are, we'll go out and buy it. you know, and I think they have the chance. It's but if they don't do it soon, I think you're gonna see it kind of just all go away. You know, there's not going to be any more English Laundry stuff. Um, and like I said, I know a lot of people are going to babble because I said get rid of the old stuff, discontinue it. No, please don't. Most of it's discontinued anyway, and it's just getting harder and harder. Not that it's hard to find right now, but it is. Some things are getting a little harder to find. Just get rid of it. As horrible as that sounds, because I like everybody to have everything. There is times where it makes sense to just wipe the slate clean and start over. And this is one of those times where if they're going to do it, they've got to start over 100%. Worry about your old stuff. It's done. And by changing the bottle and the box, well, like I said, still keeping the aesthetic of the original because you still want people to recognize it as English Laundry. But if you just took that wide, square, short kind of bottle and thickened it up and lengthened it out a little bit, even keep the same style cap, the same signature. You keep everything the same except the bottle. Make it from a big square to a thin square, big thin square to a tall fat rectangle. And it's just enough of a change that people say, okay, this is a new English Laundry. I think it would work. Anyway, what do you guys think? Do you think they have a chance? Do you think this is just complete whatever they're going to do? And maybe they're making money. Maybe they're making tons of money. They don't care. Maybe they're making enough money that what they're doing is fine. And again, if that's the case, then all this would be for naught. But I think if they really want to make an impact, like they started to, they really did start at the beginning. They were getting some steam, and then they just derailed themselves. Nobody did it to them but themselves, right? So, yeah, tell me what you think, guys. Do you think they can come back? Do you think they should just keep doing things the way they are? Are you fine with it? Do you think, like I said, they should just wipe the slate clean and start over? Because I really think they should, because they've got potential. It's just a matter of money, honestly, when it comes down. Everything comes down to money. Do they have the cash? Can they get the cash? Can they get sponsors? Can they get partners? Can they get loans? Things like that. Or do they just have the cash already? I don't know how much they're worth. I never bothered looking at their financials because I'm not a financial genius. Wouldn't make no sense to me anyway. So, all right, guys. Peace, love, be good to each other, and be good to yourselves.